The more I make these video lessons, the more I start to realize that there's a real problem with the way I was taught guitar. And my guess is it's probably similar to the way you've been taught over the years. So my hope with today's video is to find a better way for beginner guitar players to start making music on this instrument. And to all of you who, like me, have spent years going down the wrong path, to get back on track and start playing something meaningful on the guitar. So my name is Jack Ruch. Welcome to my channel. Now, I've been teaching guitar full-time as my primary job for the last couple of years. But prior to that, I was a full-time touring sideman working with a lot of Nashville-based Americana and country artists. But like a lot of people, a couple of years ago, I had to figure out how to make my living working from home. And doing these lesson videos here on YouTube and on my Patreon page has really been a blessing for me and my family. But it's not something I ever really set out to do. It's not something I'm particularly trained or qualified to do, other than the fact that I've been a professional musician for a long time. So this whole teaching experience has been a learning one for me too. A lot of trial and error and a lot of just figuring it out as I go. But it has led me to think a lot about how I was taught guitar and all the things I've picked up over the last 28 years of playing this instrument. When I first started learning guitar, I learned my open position chord shapes. And then I was shown these two basic bar chord shapes. And when it came to playing lead, I learned a couple of licks and I learned my major and minor pentatonic scale shapes, right? Not the actual scale in terms of what are the notes, what are the interval relationships, just the shape. Put your fingers here, 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 and here, and you're off and running. And the way it was always explained to me was that every song is in a key, so figure out what key it's in and then play that scale shape over top of the whole thing and you can't go wrong. That is until you run into a song that has chords that aren't diatonic to the key. Or even worse, you catch yourself aimlessly meandering through a scale, playing things that really don't make sense musically and have zero intent. Now, I think there's a better way to go about learning the guitar, and to demonstrate, I'm going to use a famous song by a famous band. I'm not going to mention the song title because I don't want to risk this video getting demonetized, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a chord progression to a song by probably the most popular band of all time, so you might recognize it. The chord progression goes A major to E major to F sharp minor to G major to D major to D minor and then back to A. Now, if you want to play over this song, the way I was taught, you would think, well, what key is the song in? Seems like it's in the key of A major, so I should be able to play the A major scale or the A major pentatonic scale over the whole thing and be good, right? But what happens when we get to that G chord, right? That G chord is not in the key of A major. So do I switch to an A dominant scale that has a G in it just for that one measure? And what about when we go from the D major to the D minor? That D minor is a borrowed chord from A minor. So do I switch to an A minor scale for that one measure? All that seems very confusing and not very musical. So instead, let's take a look at the chords and the notes that make up these chords. Instead of relying on scale shapes and guesswork to hope that we magically land on the right note at the right time, let's just look at these basic chord shapes. All of the notes that we need to play melodic lines are found right within these basic chords. So to start out, let's look at an A major chord. An A major chord is made up of the notes A, C sharp, and E. That's the root, major third, and perfect fifth. And if we look at this basic A major voicing right here, we have those notes right in the middle of the chord, right on the second fret of the D string, the G string, and the B string. We've got E, the fifth on the bottom, A, the root in the middle, and C sharp, the major third on top. So that is what's called a triad, and that is a basic triad voicing right there for an A chord. So all we have to do now is just choose one of those notes to start our melody. So let's start with the third. Let's start with the note C sharp, right? And I'll play an A bass note in the bottom to give it some context. So that can be the start of a melody. Now as we move to the E major chord, an E major chord is made up of E, G sharp, and B. And again, if we look at this basic E major open chord voicing, right in the middle of that chord on the D, G, and B strings, we have the notes E, G sharp, and open B. So there is a basic E major triad voicing right within this chord that we already know. So let's find the third of that chord. Since we did the third over the A major chord, we'll do the third over the E chord, which is this note G sharp. So now we have over A, moving to E. Now we can connect those together melodically by using notes out of the A major scale, or honestly just by using our ear to lead us from one note to the next. There's a million ways you can connect notes melodically, using scales or using chromatic notes. But I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to use my ear to guide me how to get from this note to this note over these two chords. So if I play A, and then melodically move down to the third of the E chord, there I have a nice melody that connects those two chords together. So, and already I'm playing some music and I'm playing something melodic, and I'm not tied down by a scale shape, and there's no guesswork happening. I know exactly what notes I'm playing over those chords and why I'm playing them. And more importantly, practicing this way is going to train your ear to get away from notes that don't really outline the chords. It's going to train your ear to hear those thirds, to hear the root, to hear the fifth, the important chord tones that make up those chords. So let's continue on as we go to F sharp minor. F sharp minor is made up of the notes F sharp, A, and C sharp, right? The root, the minor third, because it's a minor chord, and the perfect fifth. And again, if we look at this basic F sharp minor bar chord right here, right in the middle on the D, G, and B strings is the root, the minor third, and the fifth. So we can do the same thing, track the third to that chord. So that's going to be this note A. So if we play our melody up until this point, now we can melodically find our way up a half step to this note A. So I'm going to go, right? And that's a nice melody. And again, I'm just playing the bass note underneath to give it some context. Now, if we move up to G, right, and we play this G bar chord shape, we have the notes of a G major triad, just like this. We just move this up, and there's our G major triad shape, right, which is the notes G, B, and D, right? So again, the third of that chord is right there in the middle, and it's all a part of this bar chord shape, which is the same as this open E shape, just with a bar. So a lot of these very common chord voicings that you probably are already familiar with have these triads right within them, right? So again, all we're gonna do is move melodically from the note A up to B, right? That's the third of the next chord. So now I'm going to do, and I'll play that G underneath to give it context, but all that is, and honestly, I'm just using my ear to find that melody, and you can experiment with different ways. You could walk chromatically. You could do a ton of different things, and you can play these intervals in different places on the neck and in different octaves. I'm just doing it on these 3 strings in this position to keep things simple. So now we move to our D major chord and then our D minor chord. Now D major is made up of D, F sharp, and A. And if we look at this basic open D major voicing, those are the notes we have. A on the bottom, which is the 5th, D in the middle, which is the root, and F sharp on top, which is the major 3rd. And to make that a minor chord, all we do is drop that minor 3rd down a half step, or the major 3rd down a half step to the minor 3rd to F. So A, D, and F is our D minor triad. So now we can do the same thing. We'll target these 3rds. So there's F sharp, and we'll move that down to F over those chords. So our melody up until this point. And then let's do right, that's a nice melody. And again, I'm just using my ear to tell me where I want to go, where I want to go up, where I want to go down, how I want to move that around melodically. And you can experiment with that endlessly to find your own melodies to connect these chord tones together. So all together, we have this nice melody over these chords that we just figured out by looking at these basic chord shapes and really taking a deep look at what notes make up the chords. Instead of playing a scale and going, okay, well, this scale works over these chords, I'll just play that, and not really thinking about what notes you're actually playing. All I'm doing is simplifying it and looking at our basic chord voicings. Every note that we want in our melody is found right within these chords. The single note lines that you play and the melodies that you play are really no different from the chords. They're all connected together. It's all part of harmony, right? So we'll play our melody again. So this type of practice works really well with all types of chord progressions, even if you have a simple 3-chord progression or something more complicated. Essentially what we're doing is isolating the triads to each one of these chords. Now the triad is the root, 3rd, and 5th of the chord. And mapping out your triads on the fretboard is a really important step to learning your way around the neck. But it takes some time, and if you're interested in diving into that, I have a new triad course that just came out. It's currently on sale, and it walks you through mapping out triads all over the fretboard and gives you a lot of different exercises and techniques to use to learn that around the fretboard. So it's a great thing to check out if you're interested in diving deeper into this style of playing. Now, to demonstrate further how I would work on this kind of chord tone playing and playing notes out of the chords and then tying them together melodically, I'm going to use this chord progression that came up recently from my friend Guthrie Trapp. We taught a guitar clinic together recently, and we used a chord progression similar to this to demonstrate some of the topics we're talking about. So I'm going to use it again here today. And the chord progression goes A major to C sharp major or C sharp 7, then to F sharp minor, and then back up to A major or A7, and then D major, E major, and then back to A major, and then finally E. Right, so a nice chord progression to demonstrate this kind of thing, because there are some chords in there that are not diatonic to the key of A major. They don't fit neatly within the key. So this type of playing will be really useful over those types of chords. But essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to find the basic triads to these chords, right? A major, C sharp major, right? F sharp minor, then back to A major, and then D major, E major, and A major, right? And basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play over the track, and I'm just gonna isolate either the root of each chord, the third of each chord, or the fifth of each chord. And I'll put it up on the screen which one I'm doing. And I'm just gonna play along to this track, and I'm gonna use my own melodic sensibility, my own ear, to tie together the chord tones to these different chords. And once we go through them all, the root, the third, and the fifth, then we'll play over it, and I'll start combining different ones together. And that's where it really starts to get melodic and very musical. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I know there's a lot of information packed into this lesson, but if you're interested in learning more of this kind of stuff, check out the links down in the description. My new triad course just came out and it is currently on sale. So pick that up if you're interested in diving into more of this kind of triad chord tone type playing. I made that course because I really feel strongly that it's very important information for guitar players at every level. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the continued support. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. And until next time, happy practicing. Take care.